Hi, church. We are back for another installment of our Midweek Encouragement video series. And I have with me today one of our shepherds, Jim Unruh. So, Jim, won't you say hi?
How are y'all doing tonight? It's good to see you all.
So, we just ask questions and hopefully have a good time together and share an encouraging message. And I got to thinking, what would I ask you? And it dawned on me that you and I share two common loves that might be different from the other elders. I might not share this with any of the other elders, but our two common loves are guitars and fishing.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm going to ask questions based on both of those.
Oh, that'd be great.
So when you're in your house and you're rocking out on your guitar, you got your amp cranked up, who do you envision yourself being? Like, who are you in that moment? Who's the guitarist that you want to be?
Ah, man. I tell you what, I've jumped on a bunch of Tom Petty songs lately, and I admire his writing and his tunes because they're pretty simple. They're simple enough for me to kind of figure out, but yet some of them are pretty deep in what they cover. So he'd be one. Bob Dylan for some of the older folks that are my age and more. So those are two that I like to play with. Yeah.
Tom Petty, you said was a little easier to figure out. It was amazing what he could do with simple chord structures.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is amazing. I mean, it's almost an art in and of itself to keep it simple. And I really admire his writing and his playing in that regard.
And I think he did that on purpose. I mean, I think he purposely kept it simple and wanted to just write straightforward, simple songs, but make the song the best it could be in that simple format.
Yeah, it seems like it, because if you listen to different albums throughout his career, they're all kind of set up in that format. He doesn't take off and do a concept album that's very, complex. It's all just very simple. So
I think he's one of those guys that probably doesn't get enough credit for being a good guitarist because he didn't do a lot of fancy stuff. But I think he could do those things. He just didn't.
Yeah, and I think he had Mike Campbell to his right that was a good co-pilot. And
you didn't have to do anything fancy with Mike Campbell next to you.
That's exactly right. So it was a good combination, a good team.
Okay, and then you said Bob Dylan was your other one?
Yeah, he was kind of the voice of the 60s and 70s, more of a, counterculture guy. But in late 70s, early 80s, he became a Christian. And he wrote some incredible Christian songs. And that was a point in my life when I was looking at my relationship with the Lord and realized with my upbringing that I didn't understand this concept about baptism. And so I was really searching and looking, and he was writing this incredible music talking about his spiritual development. And it's always had a strong impression on me, even to this day. So I like to listen to that period of time. He's different than Petty in that he changes constantly and just, morphs into a different character each time. So,
as much as I love music, I haven't followed Bob Dylan that much. I don't know a ton of his stuff, but
yeah.
I feel like I should.
Yeah, most of the time it's better when it's covered by somebody else. He's got a nasally kind of a sarcastic tone to him, and other groups have really had some number one hits because they covered his music pretty well. So Anyway.
So have you run your family out of the house with your guitar playing?
There's been a couple times. In fact, I've got a friend that lives on the other side of the road, and he thinks whenever I fire that up, all of the squirrels and the rabbits and the dogs just head his way. And so he gets a little wound up with me, but I think it's about the right pitch when the glass starts rattling. So
I like it. I like it. Okay, so fishing.
Yeah.
What's your favorite fish to fish for?
That's got to be the walleye.
Okay.
A tasty fish on a shore meal, and like to try to catch those up in the Minnesota boundary waters with my sons. And you're out camping, you're portaging way back into their lake system, so you can literally put everything behind you and just experience God's pristine nature, and it's a wonderful time. So,
I'm a Southern boy, so we didn't have walleye. I've caught one in my life. It was when we were living in Indiana, and I had an older gentleman in our church that got me into kayaking down creeks.
Oh, wow.
And we would fish for smallmouth together.
Okay.
And he always told me occasionally a walleye would get in those creeks and you'd catch one. And I never believed him until I caught one. And I had no idea what to do with that thing because it had teeth, and I didn't know how to hold it. And but it was fun to catch.
Yeah, they're a little prehistoric looking, but very, very tasty. So.
Yeah. So do you have any good fish stories? All fishermen have a good fish story. Do you have any good fish stories?
Well, we were up in the boundary waters the last time, and it was during the summer, the heat of the summer. And walleye like to go deep, so they were like nobody was catching them. And we were out there for 10 days. And I think one of the last days we were trolling through a lake, and I got one, and it was a beautiful walleye. And I put it on my stringer, and we were with a bunch of friends of Grant's and Ross's, and one of them said, hey, Mr. Unruh, hold that fish up. Let me take a look at it. And I was proud to do it. So I pulled it up, and that thing just popped right off my stringer and took off, and they all had a good laugh. So I was heartbroken, but that was okay. So anyway, how about you, Gilbert?
Well, that kind of reminds me, this isn't like my favorite story, but thinking back to that walleye I caught, I had actually gone down the creek a little further than the elderly gentleman that I fished with. He was kind of behind me, just taking his time, and I had gone on down the creek, and I caught that walleye, and I wanted so bad for him to see it. So I was trying to figure out, here I am in a kayak, you got to hold your paddle, and I'm trying to figure out how to hold this fish and how to get my kayak where I can get to him. And so I just thought, I'm going to pull off on the side. I'm going to hold this fish and just wait for him to come down the creek. And again, I didn't know how to hold it because it had teeth, and I'm used to lipping bass, and so I just grabbed it around its body and just held it, and I just sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there, and right as I saw my buddy coming around the bend of the creek, that thing went to kicking and flailing and stuff, and it jumped out of my hands and back in the creek, and my buddy never saw it.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm not sure he believes I actually caught one.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. It's like, yeah, sure you did. Sure you did.
Yeah. So, but I know I caught it.
Yeah, there we go. That's right. That's what's important.
That's right. I grew up, kind of redneck living in South Alabama. And so my dad would wake me up before daylight during the week, during the school year. And we'd take the bass boat out and go out to the lake before daylight, do a lot of topwater fishing while the sun's coming up, catch bass. And then, once it hit 7:30, 7:45, the boat landing was about a mile from my school. And so my dad would take me back to the boat landing and drop me off, and I would get in my car and I'd drive to school.
Oh, that's fabulous. Wow, what a great memory. That would be wonderful to do with your dad.
That's cool. We used to do that all the time. So that was always fun times.
Yeah, that is terrific.
All right, so I guess the main reason we're on here is as one of our shepherds, just thinking this week, I know that you and I have been with some groups just talking about life in coronavirus, era, and what does that look like, and how are people coping? And so maybe as a shepherd, what would you like to say right now that might be encouraging or comforting?
I tell you, it's for me, it's a time of introspection, and I clearly miss. I've got people coming in and out of here. I clearly miss seeing everybody, and I try to envision them and pray for our group or our congregation very, very specifically. They just mean an awful lot to me personally, and I just hope that they're well and they're safe, and that they too can experience a different time right now with their relationship with Christ, and maybe think introspectively how they can develop a stronger, closer walk with Christ. So that's my hope and my prayer. Sometimes I find if I encourage others, that encourages me as well. And had an opportunity to do that with some neighbors. But honestly, I really, really enjoy Taylor's Zoom room calls. Those lift my spirits. And I've talked to some folks that say, yeah, I'm pretty upset about this and I'm down. I'm like, man, if you got to just get on the Zoom call, because she is so good about putting out some interesting topics, that being Taylor, and going into some chat rooms and then coming back together after we huddled up and having a wonderful conversation. So I personally love that.
Yeah, that's been really good. Taylor does a good job of that.
Does, very much. So.
Well, Jim, thank you for taking on the calling to be one of our shepherds, and thank you for the way that you love the OP Church and pray for them. And I know that you hurt when they hurt, and you're joyful when they're joyful. And I really am grateful for you and what you do for this church.
Thanks so much, Gilbert. I only count it as an honor and a humbling walk with Christ in doing that. And honestly, we have talked many times about how wonderful it is to walk with you and staff, and that together we want to reflect God's glory. So it's been a great partnership, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Good night. We'll see you all.